It's all fun and games until someone has to be the Nazis. Hi there, you're watching Midwinter Minis. My name's Guy.
And I'm Hattie, and in this video we're going to be painting up some cool tank models from Bolt Action, probably the most popular historical wargame. This video has been kindly sponsored by World of Warships, but we'll tell you about that in a minute.
We're going to try and cover at least one thing every month that isn't something made by Games Workshop, and Bolt Action is something we get asked to cover a lot, so we thought we'd give it a go. We've got a few Bolt Action bits and bobs on our shelves, so we grabbed the M4 Sherman, the most widely used medium tank by the USA and the Western Allies in the Second World War, and also the Panzer IV, the most produced German tank in the same period. Now there's two of us, two tanks, all good, right? I asked Hattie which one she wanted to paint for the video, and she said, please don't make me paint the Nazis. And that got me thinking, isn't that really the main problem with historical wargaming? At least games that are set within living memory of a generation or two.
While we talk about that, we're going to paint up these tanks, but we'll pop in little descriptions of our painting processes and materials on the screen, just in case you want to know how we painted the models. I'll go first with the M4 Sherman.
Now before we go all doom and gloom and dive straight into the problems with historicals, let's cover some of the great things about them. They are more affordable to get into, with army boxes tending to run about half the price per model of Warhammer, for example. They're grounded in reality, so if you're not really interested in sci-fi or fantasy, or maybe you're a history buff, this stuff is going to pique your interest. There's also something really exciting about living out well-documented battles on the tabletop with moments of unbelievable heroism, bravery, and victory against all odds. Also, the rules, particularly for Bolt Action, are great, well known and loved in the wargaming community for its blend of fast-paced action, well-balanced forces, interesting scenarios, and random activation that keeps you on your toes during the game.
From a hobbying side, historicals are a lot easier to paint because most things are pretty drab and camouflaged, which makes for very forgiving paint jobs. No crazy multicolour wet blends, over-the-top saturation and contrast, or legions of super soldiers wearing colours that are a total pain to paint.
But we've got to talk about the elephant in the room here. Or maybe the fascist in the gaming club? Now, let me be really, really clear here. We're not accusing anyone of anything, we're both just genuinely curious as to why historical wargaming isn't as popular as the make-believe stuff we all love. One obvious issue is that the armies in historical wargames were real, and were made of real people, and real people lived, fought, and died for their countries and ideologies. In make-believe settings like Warhammer 40k, the baddies, by which I mean everyone, don't really exist. And while they might be allegories or warnings of how humanity may end up, the crazy space fantasy aesthetic and over-the-top vibe of the whole thing stops it from being grounded in reality and makes it more palatable. In a world where even the good guys are horrible, the baddies are badder than bad, and in the stories and background of the game they commit horrific atrocities and war crimes, but they're not real. It's escapism, like watching a scary film. It's fun because it's not real. The other side of this coin is historical wargames like Bolt Action. Basically, someone has to play as the Nazis, or at least a Nazi-allied army. Understandably, some people might feel that playing as the Nazis is inherently immoral or offensive, regardless of the historical context. It seems maybe a bit yucky or weird to be having fun playing as them or collecting them, glorifying or romanticizing a regime that committed real-life atrocities. The stuff also happened within living memory of some people. Now those people are really old now, to be fair, and they probably won't be playing war games, but their families might, and it might leave a bad taste in their mouths. Many people have experienced trauma or have family members who have experienced trauma related to the events in the Second World War. Now both Hattie and I have family members who actually fought in these wars. Both our grandfathers were in the RAF. My great-grandfather was awarded the Victoria Cross, and I'm pretty sure that given the scale of these conflicts, most people watching this video will have family members who were involved. Playing a game where one player is controlling the Nazis might not sit right with a lot of people. In simple terms, games that are based in realism, portraying real-life death and destruction that happened, is going to turn a lot of people off. Killing fantasy space bugs with stompy robots? Awesome, let's go. Also, let's not pretend that far-right groups don't still exist, and that their supporters might be into tabletop games.
Okay, so I think my tank's done. I'm really pleased with how that camouflage turned out. Turns out blue tank's a really useful tool. Also, I'm glad I did the two-tone in the beiges because I think that gives it a little extra spice. I think it's pretty cool how using matte varnish over a transfer makes everything look like it's just painted on and supposed to be there rather than a transfer. And this was actually my first time using transfers, so I think they turned out quite well. Actually, this is the first time I've painted anything historical, and it was surprisingly easy. If you get the basic elements right, you just need to add a little bit of weathering and it's pretty much done. Although, maybe I could have eased up on the mud.
So Hattie's done, I'm up next, a perfect break in the action to tell you about the awesome sponsor of this video, World of Warships. Now I don't know if you knew already, but I only accept sponsorships on the channel from stuff that I actually use in real life, and that way you hopefully know my endorsement is genuine. I play World of Warships, and given you're watching a video about real world weapons of war, it seems a pretty good fit for the video, right? World of Warships is a graphically stunning, very fun naval combat game where you can take command of over 300 destroyers, cruisers, battleships, aircraft carriers, and even submarines now in all-out online multiplayer warfare. I play it on PC, but it also has a console version too, and best of all, they are all free to play. But unlike other free-to-play games, it's not just pay to win. The more you play, the more you can unlock your tech tree of new ships, commanders, and abilities. Gameplay-wise, it's great fun. There's something very satisfying about blowing up ships with literally the biggest guns humans have ever made while trying not to accidentally plow yourself into rocks. And being a bit of an audio nerd, I couldn't help noticing that this game has some of the best sound design I've heard in a while. Very immersive, and the score is really nice too. If you're new to the game and sign up using the code Warships, you'll get some bonus doubloons, credits, premium account time, and a ship. You might also find yourself fighting alongside, or against me, but be warned, I'm pretty good at this. Back to the painting. I'm going to give the Panzer IV an efficient, speedy, but hopefully pretty great looking paint job. Now, not wanting to paint everyone with the same brush, but what reasons might a person have for actively collecting an Axis army? Maybe they're just a power gamer. The Germans had some really good equipment, tanks and tactics. Maybe they just want to win the games they play. Maybe they're a historian who studied the German perspective of the war, or to understand the psychological rationale behind regimes like Nazism. Maybe they're just big Hugo Boss style aficionados, but maybe, just maybe, they might be slightly too into it. Another reason historical war games like Bolt Action might not get the same traction and community engagement as stuff like Warhammer is because, for us as content creators, making a video that talks about stuff like the Nazis and maybe uses swastika transfers and other stuff like this will get your video demonetized. We probably won't make any money from YouTube on this video because of that, so it's obviously not a great topic or franchise for YouTube videos, at least for channels like us who do this as their actual job. Now, what a perfect time to remind you that we simply couldn't do this full time without our amazing support on Patreon, and we'll give our newest members a big thank you at the end of the video. So on paper, a great historical wargame like Bolt Action has every right to be the main tabletop miniatures game, rather than Warhammer 40k, but it's not. People say 40k is so popular because it has such a rich lore and backstory, and it's been going since the 80s and has over 1,000 novels written about it, and hundreds of tabletop games and video games to immerse yourself in, but hear me out here. The Second World War started 85 years ago and has, let's just say, much more lore. Tens of thousands of novels, thousands of documentaries, thousands of films, and hundreds of video games, as well as accounts from real humans. One of my favourite memories of when I was little was listening to my granddad's war stories. Now, for some people, the historical aspect might be a turn-off, kind of like forced learning. I mean, not everyone enjoyed history at school after all. Also, people that play both Warhammer 40k and Bolt Action pretty much unanimously agree that Bolt Action is the more fun game, with modern, engaging rules and gameplay. And Bolt Action, while it's still a premium franchise and isn't cheap, is still far more affordable than 40k to get into, and it's easier to paint. So on paper, it's all coming up Bolt Action, so why can't it knock 40k off the top spot? Is it because someone has to play the Nazis? Speaking of which, my Panzer IV is done. Just like Hattie said before, I'm really impressed at how quickly and easily these things come together. I only really felt like there was about 5 or 6 real steps in this, and it looks great. It looks like you could take a photo or a kind of cool glamour shot with some interesting terrain and it might look real. I wasn't 100% sure where the transfers were supposed to go because there's a lot of detail on the model itself, kind of obscuring the flat armor areas, a problem I'm well used to with 40k, but I think it looks pretty realistic. Not historically accurate, I don't think, but looks cool and very, very easy to achieve. So hopefully if you end up needing to paint loads of German tanks, these techniques might help you.
So, is there something else we're missing? Let us know in the comments. Do you play historicals? How do you feel about it? Even if you don't play historical war games, let us know too. Would you have no problem at all, or does the idea of playing a game based on real wars feel a bit off? Or maybe we're just overthinking the whole thing. Do you want to see more bolt action or other historicals on the channel? We've got the bolt action Band of Brothers starter set and a few characters we could paint if you fancied seeing those. Maybe even a little battle report or a learn to play video? Let us know.
And as I said, a massive thanks to our amazing Patreon supporters who have joined us recently. Mark's Game Room, Brendan M, Ryan Evans, Carbon Green, Dom Lane 12, John Tyler, Pieboy 4242, Adam France, Robbie Skirmish Mats, Hjelm Gjörk, Daniel Turner, The Forgotten Kroot, Martin Kaspers, Steve Leach, Kira and Kotori, Robin Cooper, Jing Marakila, John Modlich, Quiet Order Gaming, Grim Dork, Asa Wheatley, Tactical Pete, Stephen Cox, Adria Segoa Vicente, Alexander Swag, Leo Nichols, James, and Stiff Bristles. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to check out World of Warships, and we'll catch you next time. Bye for now.
Bye bye!